Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, February 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in exactly 200 days. The game against Michigan in 291 days. If you're planning your next event, you should make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. Some good, interesting vibes around the Ohio State football program in a lot of different directions on Monday. Tony Gerdeman and I did a Buckeye Weekly show talking about the news that former Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel is now going to be Ohio's lieutenant governor. It was an interesting piece of news that broke on Monday. Ohio State tight ends coach Keenan Bailey is now Ohio State tight ends coach and co-offensive coordinator Keenan Bailey. Talked about both of those pieces of news in the Buckeye Weekly podcast feed. You can find that there. Also got some news about the Ohio State football spring practice schedule, spring game, or whatever is going to pass for a spring game this year. Going to be talking about that right now with Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, we knew that spring ball was going to start a little later than normal, and that's sort of a function of, hey, the season went a little longer than normal this year. But it's a little interesting. This season, spring ball is rolling out 2 weeks later than normal, and it's ending at exactly the normal time.
Yeah, it's a cram session, so very fitting for college, right? Gotta, get it in there. Yeah, spring ball will start for Ohio State on March 17th, and that is a Monday. Once everybody gets back from spring break, that's when things will get going for the Buckeyes with their 15 practices that will all end up same time, end the same time as it normally does, right around April 12th. And that's when the quote-unquote, Tom, Spring Showcase is scheduled. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yes, March 17th, mark your calendars. Spring practice for the Buckeyes starts. What is that, about 7 days after the season? Is that about ish?
Something like that. It's going to be 28 and 15 and 58. 58 is about right. Yeah. So yeah, that's a relatively short period of time between the end of the season and the start of spring ball. And, one of the reasons that they're able to have 2 weeks shaved off the beginning and not have to go push the end back is because, of course, that 1 week was spring break. So they normally did those two practices before spring break and they had a week off. So you're just pushing those two practices a little bit later. So not losing 2 full weeks or anything like that. So yes, St. Patrick's Day, Monday, St. Patrick's Day, coming back from spring break. Make sure you're hydrated, kids. And no green beer in Columbus. It'll be red beer for St. Patrick's Day in honor of the start of Ohio State spring football. Now, the 2 days before we get to the spring showcase, we do need to talk about the 2 days that are, I think, of the most interest of all of those practices. And those are the practices. There's 2 on Saturdays. Those are usually scrimmages. Often those are inside the stadium. Sometimes they'll do those inside the indoor facility. Of all of those are typically the 2 where I feel like we learn the most, whether we're there or whether we're just able to talk to people who were there. Because that's where, you've got your practices and you've got we got to learn how to help the freshmen figure out where all the drills are and all that kind of stuff. You got that. But those scrimmages, those are maybe even more so than the spring game, even in a year when you do have a full spring game. Those are where you sometimes learn the most about the team in the spring. Yeah,
for sure. And the first scrimmage would be the 7th practice. So basically the midway point. So by that point, you've got enough working capital in terms of the young guys who know what they're doing and enough of the offense in that you can start to do some of that stuff. And then the following week would be the second scrimmage. So back when there used to be jersey scrimmages and things like that, it was always the jersey scrimmage before the spring game, like the week before the spring game or so. That was always the one that you wanted to be at because that was the one that everybody wanted it. And it was, you're both sides, offense and defense, were fighting for the scarlet jerseys back in the day. And now it's kind of a similar thing where it's not as relaxed as the spring game or whatever they're going to do this year. So there's certainly more energy with those 2 scrimmages. If you can get in, it's always an entertaining situation. And we'll see which one of those, if maybe one of those is a student appreciation day. And that's when media will get in with about 1,200 students as well.
Yeah, there's still a lot to be sorted out here, and the big day at the end of the spring. The spring game is, as Tony said earlier, a spring showcase. We will see, Tony, if you get within $100 of the total amount spent at the concession stands, you actually get both spring showcases. Not many people know that. That's going to be a fun new tradition. Boy, Tony, what do you want to tell everyone about the spring showcase and exactly what to expect? Because, boy, I have too many things that I know right now about what that's going to look like.
I'm almost just kind of expecting some sort of like rock and jock type of like thing that doesn't put the players in any kind of danger, but also allows them to do some stuff. I'm like, home run derby, dunk tank. Like, is this going to be, when you go to the Rutgers games and like walking to the stadium, you're basically walking like down a midway of like carnival games. Is that sort of thing? Can, if you pay $500, can you run a play? Can you like legitimately, like Archie Griffin did it a couple years ago? Can you try to get through this Ohio State defense? And then, by God, that's what David Perkins' music was that the
yes. Watch out, Brutus! Head on a swivel. Here comes David Perkins. Yes. I think my son was watching the Pro Bowl, and it was like, or I saw clips on Twitter or something where the Pro Bowl is no longer a football game. It's kind of like a skills showcase kind of thing. It could be something like that. It could also be just offense versus defense and something, a little mini scrimmage kind of thing. Because I think people don't necessarily know this, that, with the roster changes now, you've got 105 guys. You're losing some of your walk-ons potentially, which is depth, which is important if you're dividing your team into two pieces. And you've got guys who are not necessarily enrolled yet, and you've got guys who are going to be banged up, and you're going to be really cautious with them. The guiding factor on this in terms of what you're able to do or not do in terms of a spring game, a lot of times boils down to nothing more than how many healthy offensive linemen do you have? Because that is, it seems crazy that could determine the whole thing. But I think a lot of people should probably know there are a lot of times that's what determines the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the entire format is generally based on how many offensive linemen you have. And I think the Pro Bowl part of it was just 7-on-7. And so maybe that's what you do here is just eliminate the line of scrimmage altogether and just allow those, hey, good 14 practices, guys, or, you're going to go off work on your own here in South Stands or, wherever, while everybody else watches some one-on-ones or some 7-on-7, some things like that where, it's, you're not necessarily putting anybody in harm's way. Like, one of the fun things to watch at practice is the one-on-ones, like throwing downfield. And I think that would be an entertaining thing. Even like Friday Night Lights, that was always the thing that finally, like what you'd finally have the quarterbacks throwing to the receivers, going one-on-one against the top defensive backs that have shown up. So it's like, you're just kind of waiting for that. I don't know if are they willing to do like 40-meter races? Are they willing to find out who the fastest Ohio State Buckeye is? Because that was one of the things they do at the Friday Night Lights. They'd find out who the fastest player was, and they'd have heats. And like, what do you want to put the players through, and what do you not want to put the players through? That's why showcase, Tom, it's such a great word because it can also mean we're putting them behind glass. Do not touch.
The golf carts they take to go from the locker room all the way to the other side of the stadium to get the coaches up to the press box. Kind of like that, but with like the Pope Mobile glass. It's going to be kind of like that for probably a lot of the guys.
I would like, Tom, with the golf carts. I always loved the quarterback skills competitions where you're throwing at the golf carts with the bullseyes. You've got 3 quarterbacks who are vying to be a starting quarterback. Like, put them on the show, like make them a big part of this in terms of skill competitions or whatever.
I'm already excited for if they do a 7-on-7 thing. Those tend to be, let's say, tilted a little bit towards the offense, and with an offense where you're bringing back some really, really high skill level folks, going up against a probably new look Ohio State defense. I don't want to say panic city immediately in terms of the Ohio State defense. Like, try and remember that those things are a little tilted towards the offense before you completely mash the panic button through the through the core of the earth in terms of what the defense might look like in the spring. It's okay. It's okay. Like just let things play out. It'll be okay.
Waiting for the headlines on like the MSN.com. Ohio State offense defeats defense 146-3. Trouble brewing in Columbus.
Yes. Yeah. Well, no. You made that sound like it was punctuated with a question mark. It feels like that would be an exclamation point. Trouble brewing in Columbus. Yes. No. It's whatever it is. The spring game. We do this every year. We talk about the spring game every year, and it's like just go out and have fun and go sit in the sunshine, and it'll be fine. And what you see in the spring game bears only a slight correlation with what you're going to actually see in the fall. So, whatever a spring showcase is, I would encourage you to go enjoy it, because there are, I saw a stat that I think there were 5 places in the nation that had 50,000 people showing up for their spring game last year. Ohio State was the biggest with 80,000. Most places are, Syracuse set a record last year with like 16,000 people. Like that's the normal thing. Washington had like 4,000 people last year. Spring game in Columbus is a little bit of a spectacle, much like pretty much everything to do with Ohio State football in Columbus. So, whatever the spring showcase ends up being, I would encourage you to enjoy it. We certainly will as well.
Yeah, I think, Tom, before we find out what the spring showcase actually is, we should do a bold prediction show on the spring showcase on that Saturday. Like everything that happens, without knowing anything about any of the rules, we should go ahead and make some bold predictions on exactly what's going to happen.
That sounds fantastic. I'm going to say my first bold prediction: Jeremiah Smith does nothing, and they keep him in bubble wrap on the sidelines. What are they doing? I don't know, but I know what he's not doing, and that's literally anything.
My first bold prediction is that the crowd will riot.
Also, that's not bold. That's the free space. That should be the one you give me just for free at the end. Yes. All right. So we'll have plenty more to talk about spring football and the spring showcase, whatever again that might be, and Ohio State basketball and all the other stuff going on right now at Ohio State at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus there as well. Make you a smarter football fan. That's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.